Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Real, Raw, and Honest. Today, we're going to be talking about something that I've been feeling a little bit of lately, and maybe you have been as well, and that's stress. I want to break it up over the next couple of weeks into just bite sized pieces so that we can take a look at it and really just begin to focus on how to better deal with our stress and to understand where it comes from and why we act or behave the way that we do while we're stressed, okay? So, if that makes sense, and if it's something that you struggle with, and I think most people do struggle with it, if you wanted to share this with someone that you know who might be feeling quite stressed at the time, we'll be having a few weeks, but please share and subscribe, like, and leave a comment as we go. These things all help me. It's not like I want to be like a world changer or I don't want to be a massive influencer, but what I do want is I want the things that we talk about and the things that we all go through to be able to help to meet the needs of other people so that we can grow and we can heal together. So let's dive in, shall we? So let's talk about stress. Sometimes people look at it and they go, the greatest fear that you can ever have is public speaking. And I'm not going to say that that's not true. I think there is a lot of there's a lot of emotions that go with public speaking. Fear is one of them, but leading up to it, there can be a certain level of stress that goes with it. But not just that. Let's look at some other areas that might cause you stress. There's good stress and there's bad stress that we can go through. Good stress is you're getting a new job promotion, you're moving across the country to take a new position. There's a wedding coming up, your wedding coming up. There's a baby on the way. These are all good things, but they can also add a level of stress because you're uncertain of what things are going to look like. Of course, there's bad stress as well. A bad stress can include things like, you've got deadlines at work, you've got to put certain things out, you've got to get the project done. Maybe you got sick or someone in your family, your mom, your dad, your husband, one of your kids gets ill. Now you've got stresses around that. Maybe you've lost your job. And in this economy, that could be a very real situation. Maybe there's not enough paycheck for not enough money for the month, right? There's lots of things that can cause stress. Maybe your kid's being bullied at school. So we've got good stress and we've got bad stress. So the thing about this is that stress is what we feel whenever we're facing a problem, whenever we're facing a task or an event. So there's stress that comes with those things, whether they're good or whether they are bad, right? So stress is, what we feel when we're facing something that is maybe feeling a little uncomfortable for us, right? So stress comes from the things that make a demand on us. And that what that means when I say that is it's stress is it's making a demand on us. It requires that I solve something or that I fulfill something, right? I remember, being in school and I remember having to, speak my essay in front of the school. That was stressful. More stressful when I had to speak it in front of the parents. More stressful when you have to speak in front of a larger group of people. I remember the first time I gave my testimony in front of 150 women. Terrifying. Like I remember the stress and the fear of those things that come along. There's a draw. There's a pull. Something that I have to fulfill that's happening in the moment. And so or a situation that you have to solve, or maybe there's a problem that you can't solve and there's all these other things that are going on. When my first husband was ill, a lot of stress because I didn't know how to handle it. I'd never been here before. I'd never had a spouse that was ill. He was always the strong one. I seemed to be the one that got the flu whenever the kids had it. He seemed to walk away from those things unscathed all the time. I'm like, what is that and how does that work? Of course, there's some realistic and understanding reasons. I'm the one that was taking care of them most of the time. I was the one they were coughing into the face of. And so, of course, there's those things, that you can look at and go, realistically speaking, that is one of those things. But so there's a situation that you either can't solve, can't resolve, or you're expected to resolve, or a task that you have to fulfill, something that's coming upon you and it's in your lap and you have to figure something out with it. So what happens is when you're in a situation that is stressful, and I want you to think about a situation, maybe the last time that you found yourself, sorry, in a stressful situation, a stressful environment. Maybe you were asked to do something or whatever it is. You know what causes you stress. So think about that moment for just a second here. So what happens is that there's this the stress that we're under requires an emotional withdrawal. So first of all, what we might be feeling is that emotional tenseness, that fear that might go with it, the insecurity that might be bubbling up because of the thing that's in front of us. But there's also can be an intellectual withdrawal that is required of us. Like I said with my husband, how do I do this? How do I manage working, taking care of him? He's in the hospital. Is he going to live? When he comes home, what is that going to look like? What do I do? How do I manage it? Things I had to get into place, medications that had to be taken, trips to the hospital that had to happen, not enough money at the end of the month, right? So these were all things that were causing stress. So there's emotional and there's intellectual. How do I deal with this? How do I resolve this? What do I do with it? I need to file it in some order in my mind that's going to help make sense in the future or even right now. But there can also be physical withdrawals, right? Like stress plays a really important role in your overall health. When you're feeling stressed, your body responds. Your body responds to the stress. And so you find yourself maybe getting sick quicker. You might find yourself with headaches or backaches. You might find yourself in a situation where, you just don't feel good, like a nauseous or upset stomach. Lots of things can happen because of the stress. So when we look at stress, it's not just, oh, I'm a little bit stressed. No, your stress is stress, and it plays a part. It plays a role in how you think, how you act, how you feel, how you manage your situation around you. So it's okay to understand that tasks require a greater withdrawal in some areas. So you can go, is it a level 1 stress or is it a level 10 stress? So that's two different things, right? But stress still has something to do with all of these things we've talked about: emotionally, physically, spiritually, and intellectually. So stress plays a part in all of that. So it's okay to go, my stress might not be as great as your stress, but that doesn't remove it. And it doesn't make it not effective. It doesn't mean any of that. What it means is that in this situation, maybe somebody else's stress is greater than your stress, but stress is still stress, and we need to learn how to better cope with it. So let's talk a little bit about negative stress in our today. Can be further complicated because maybe you grew up in a home like I did, where there was just chaos, a lot of chaos, not every day, but it was an unsafe environment and there was things that were going on. My home life was very stressful. As a child, I didn't know what to expect. I went to school, that was unsafe. I came home, that was unsafe. So I'm growing up in this environment where there's stress, it's angry, sometimes it's negative, it's unpredictable, and it can be violent. So that creates this level of stress that I'm feeling around the situations that I'm in, right? So when you grow up in an environment like that, that is stress. That's stress. And so you find yourself living in a fishbowl of stress, but you don't realize that. As a child, you don't realize that this is my fishbowl. This is my stress is my fishbowl. You don't realize that. And when you grow up in stress, it means that your stress level is always on. So let's say I'm at home and I hear somebody starting to raise their voice. My dad's starting to raise his voice. It's starting to get really quiet, uncomfortable quiet. I'm aware of that. That means I'm feeling stress. I feel the stress immediately, right? So what do I do with that? Then the next day I have to go to school and it's stress because am I going to be picked on? Am I going to be bullied? What's going to happen there? So stress. So I lived in this environment of stress. Now that might not be your situation. Maybe you grew up in a home that was wonderful, and that's awesome. I'm really glad for you. That's great, and I'm really happy for you in that environment. But if for those of you who grew up in a home that was like mine, maybe your mother and father worked and they worked late hours and you came home from school and you were home by yourself and you had to make yourself a pizza pop in the microwave or whatever, and that was your situation, your environment, there's still stress with that because you're a child. You shouldn't be left alone for long periods of time. So you have this stress that you're under. So negative stress is complicated by stress that has never been resolved. So in my situation, anytime I feel stress as an adult, it would trigger all the stresses I've never known how to deal with. I never learned how to deal with the stresses. There was never anybody to discuss it with. There was no conversation to be had, nobody to take me by the hand and walk me through it and say, okay, so let's pull this apart and let's look at it and go, what are the reality of these things that you're going through? Do we need to, how can you better prepare yourself for school? How can we address it? Can we talk to the principal? Can we talk to your teachers? Can we talk to the parents? There was none of that. And so even in home, it was like, we're just going to cover it up. We're going to pretend it doesn't happen. So negative stress then becomes complicated because in our life today, because we've never resolved stress in our life. So if it's positive stress, and we like to think that positive stress is good stress, and I do remember, being in an environment like this with Jared when he was dancing, and he was just a really great dancer, and he won a lot, and he has plaques and scholarships and all that kind of stuff. But the reality is of that whole situation, everybody goes, that's great, but the reality is that there was a lot of people who didn't like him, not just kids, but parents didn't like him either. This could make some competitions a little bit uncomfortable, right? And so I remember going to my doctor and I said, I'm kind of struggling with this. And she goes, but it's good stress. And I'm like, yeah, but it's not all good stress because I don't really know how this thing is going to turn out. And I don't know whether, people are saying they're going to take him out back and hurt him. Are they actually going to do that? Right? Because, parents are they're going to try to get my kid expelled from the competition because they want their kid to have, to be able to succeed. And I'm like, are those things that are actually going to happen? Like, I didn't know, right? So stress, right? So we can look at stress, positive stress, we'll call it that. The wedding's coming up, you're at the deadline, you've got some things that still need to be done. You got 3 days to do it in stress, right? It's still stress. Because the thing is, it doesn't matter whether it's positive stress or it's negative stress. If you've never learned how to deal with stress in your life, you still don't know what to do. You still feel it emotionally, you still feel it physically, you still feel it spiritually, you still feel it in every single way because you're trying to figure out you don't know what to do. It can still stop you. So we're going to be talking about this for a few weeks, but because the thing is that the reason we don't know how to handle stress is because we have never learned how to handle it as children, but at the same time, we had needs that were not being met. We had needs that, were overlooked. Perhaps we found ourselves in danger much of the time and there was no rescue in those situations. So we have these things that, that left this want, this hunger, this need inside of us. And when we feel stress, that thing is highlighted in our life. So what do we do in these situations? So whether it's positive stress or whether it's negative stress, it just still pulls us in the wrong direction. And so what we need to do is we need to learn how to handle stress. We need to learn how to begin to pull it apart. We need to learn how to manage it in our own situation and in our own life. So when we're not taught that positive calming tools when we're children, when those things have not been taught to us, when the parent didn't come along and say, I understand that you're afraid and there's no apologies that are ever given. Yes, we know that daddy got mad and yes, he responded badly and he's really sorry and, he's going to get some help so he doesn't do it again. And, you must have been terrified. When that doesn't happen, right? When those things are not validated in a child, you carry it. And so positive calming techniques and tools are important for us to learn in every situation, but when it comes to stress, it's important. These tools that help us to work out the problem, tools that help us to not to have to struggle with these things as an adult, right? So these areas of stress don't have to take us out. What they'll do is we'll sit down and we'll go, I've got tools. I know what to do. I'm going to figure this out, and I'm not going to fall underneath the pressure of it. So those are the things that we're going to be taking a look at over the next few weeks. The thing is, children of all ages, very often, if you're growing up in a good home, your parents are those ones who are going to come along and they're going to teach you how to deal with problems. They're going to talk to you about the bullying that's going on in school. They're going to talk to you about the D that you got on your report card or the note that your teacher sent home. Good parents are going to help you to understand that, they make mistakes too. Good parents are going to help you to understand, I know that you're stressed because it's exam time, so let's figure out a good way of looking at this so you don't need to wear that, carry it, be burdened by it, right? So they learn thousands and thousands of these coping strategies as children, right? They learn different ways of looking at problems, looking at situations, seeing other individuals, understanding their dynamics, and helping them to feel that they are not powerless in their situation. This helps them emotionally, and it helps them in appropriate ways to be able to cope with everyday things that might come along instead of the freeze, the flight, or the fight, right? And so we need to look at that and go, okay, so there's a stressful situation in front of me. What do I do now? But the problem is that for many of us, and I know that I don't speak for myself here, there's many of us who didn't grow up in that kind of home, like I said. And I grew up in a home where stress was my fishbowl. That's what I lived in. I lived in this environment that was unsafe, unpredictable, violent, angry, verbally abusive. Like this is the fishbowl that I lived in. And so stress was a very real everyday issue. It's something that I woke up to and something I went to bed to. I remember reading quite a while ago that when you go to sleep, that if you find it difficult to fall asleep at night, it might be because there was something that happened in your life at that time that you find that even though you're not remembering it, that there's still something inside of you that's being triggered because that was an unsafe time for you. Well, that could very well be the case for me. I've kind of looked at those kinds of things. But for the most part, now I can go to bed earlier and I can go to sleep and it's all good. I think that I don't have to stay up till midnight, 1 o'clock anymore, until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning till I'm so tired I can't stay awake. But I can go to bed at 9:30, 10 o'clock, and I can fall asleep and I can wake up at 6 and be rested, right? So that there has been growth in that area. So the thing is when you grow up in this environment with this emotional stress that's happening every day in your life, there's this thing that happens where we kind of stay in a state of stress. And this is where we need the inner healing, right? This is where we're in an environment where we need to stop and we need to look and we need to go, maybe. And I'm going to say this to you, maybe consider it. Because what happens is, and we're going to talk about this again next week and the week after that, is that maybe you're in a situation where you feel stress, but you don't recognize stress in your life until you're like at a level 10, 9, something like that, maybe even an 8, where it's starting to ramp up significantly so that you're going, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize I was stressed when I was at a 1, when I was at a 4 or a 6. It's life. It's just what I've always known. And then you get to this high end and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm stressed. And now you realize all the areas you're stressed in and you're like, I don't know. I don't know what to do. Now I'm going to procrastinate. Now I'm going to maybe get sick physically. Maybe I'm going to, just freeze and just scroll through Facebook or TikTok or whatever, or YouTube, right, for hours on end and just stay in this state of going, I don't know what to do. I'm paralyzed by my situation because I have so much stress that I don't know what to do. But the thing is when you grow up in that environment where stress is your life, you don't realize you've got stress till you're at the high end of the stress level. And so that's the truth for many people. And so I want you to consider, it doesn't matter to me whether you are at a level 1 or a level 3 or a level 10. If you've got stress in your life, we need to look at this a little bit more, because we could all handle our stress a little bit better. It's not good to go, I've been so stressed, I'm going to go out to the bar and I'm going to drink until I'm obliterated and then come home and somebody's going to pour me into bed and I'll wake up in the morning and I'll feel gross all day. That is not the appropriate way of handling it. Either that or overeating or not eating or whatever it is we do in order to cope with our stress. So let's take a look at a few tools here, shall we? So the number one thing is to recognize that you are stressed. I'm stressed. I admit it. I've got some things going on. Just before my book was launched, I had stress. Well, it's not launched yet, but before my book came out, I had stress. I had all these emails I had to fill out and send back, and I had to sign them, and I had to figure out how to get them back there. And it was stressful. Like I'm not lying when I said I had 26 to 30 emails I had to look, read, fill out, sign, send back. That was my world for a while. And so it was a stressful time having to do the audio book, and I still had appointments on top of that, trying to make things work so that I was getting everything accomplished. It was a stressful time. And so I think I actually did pretty good, although my housework suffered a little bit. But sometimes that's a one-off, and maybe I need to look at that. So number one, recognize and admit that you are stressed. Level 1, level 2, level 3, level 10, you're stressed. Wherever you are, you have stress. That's it. Recognize and admit it. Because the symptoms of stress can include things like, and we're going to go into this in future sessions, sleeplessness. Are you able to lay down and just go to sleep? If you can't, and if your mind is running over some things that you need to think about, it might be stress. Do you have tight muscles? Are your shoulders tight? Is your jaw tight? Are your muscles tense? Do you feeling that? Do you have brain fog, right? Maybe you have a low-level headache. So recognize that these are some of the symptoms or some of the signs that say that you have stress. So take a look at that and be honest about it. And it's better to deal with stress when you're at a level 1, level 2, level 3 than when you're way up here and you're almost paralyzed because you don't know what to do. So realize that. So the second thing that we need to do is we need to determine where we feel the most drained. Are we feeling emotionally drained? Are we feeling intellectually drained, physically drained, or spiritually drained? Where am I feeling the drain? Where am I feeling the exhaustion? Where am I feeling the pull? What's trying to meet the need and where am I feeling it? So try to determine, I'm feeling it when I was doing, just before I got everything ready for my book, when I was sending it in, I found myself twitching a lot, like just physically unable to just relax, unable to just kind of sit in the moment. I always had to be doing something. I was on my phone. I was always doing something, and so that was a physical response I was having to the stress, because I felt like I was going to fall behind if I didn't keep on top of everything. And so where are you feeling it? Determine where you're feeling the drain from. If you can, that would be a good thing to do. So the third thing is to begin to pray and ask God to give you tools to better deal with your stress. What are the tools you need in this situation? If, like me, you weren't taught those tools when you were a kid, my dad, when he had a bad day, he'd come home, crack open the rye bottle and drink. And so that's what I did for quite a while, actually, before I knew Jesus, is I would go to the bar and I would drink, and that's how I dealt with my stress. Then after I became born again, I realized, well, that's not the way to deal with stress. So what would I do? I would find myself rapidly and intensely cleaning my house, and I would get into every nook and cranny. The house would be absolutely sparkling, but the thing that I needed to deal with was left undone. So I still had stress. I just had a clean house while I had stress. So begin to pray and ask God to give you workable tools to help you better deal with your stress. And that can include something like, making a list of things that need to get done, and then putting a timeline. This needs to be done by such and such a day. I can deal with this today and this tomorrow, and so on, and kind of breaking it up that way. So ask God for tools. If it's emotional, how can you deal with your stress? Go for a walk, go for a run, go exercise, go out with some friends, just for dinner, to have some laughs, play a game. What can you do to better deal with your stress? And number 4, and this is where the inner healing part comes, like, honestly evaluate your home life when you were a child growing up. Be honest. Like, we all want to go, oh, my life was great. I never had any issues when I was a child. My mom and dad made some mistakes, sure, but they weren't horrible. And I'm not saying my parents were horrible. My parents did the best they knew how to do. But the reality is their best affected me. Their best affected my siblings. Their best, it caused a level of stress in all of us. And so learning what those things are and how to deal with that, right? Honestly evaluating your home life. What was it like? Was your home life stressful? Did you feel like you needed to be perfect? Did you feel like you needed to accomplish all of the chores every day or you were going to be in trouble? Be honest. How was your home life stressful, and how stressful was it? So after you've done that, then looking at your parents or your siblings or whoever and forgiving, and then releasing those who need it. Now, I talk a lot about forgiveness. It's something I'm going to revisit again, but you can go back and you can listen to very early on. I talked about forgiveness, and so you can go way back and you can listen to that, and you can learn about forgiving and releasing. The 5th thing that we need to do is to determine which one of our needs is not being met in the current situation. And is it the same need that was not being met when you were a child? So in my home, if there was a situation that came up, I was required to just deal with it. There was no assistance. There was no help. I often liken it to, going into a kitchen and you've got the flour, the sugar, the eggs, the butter, you've got the cake pan, you've got the mixer out there and the cocoa powder, and you're required to make a cake. But there is no instructions on how to make the cake. So now you have stress because you have to make a cake because you have guests coming, and it has to be good, and it has to at least look like a cake, but you don't know how to make that happen. So that's kind of what happens in a stressful environment where the home life is like that as a child. So it's looking at that and going, what of my needs weren't met when I was a child, and what of my needs are not being met right now? So are you being asked to do something without the guidance and without the instruction? If it's the first time you've ever had to make the cake, you might need some guidance. You might need to have somebody there to help you walk through it so that you can do it well. And at the same time, you might need those instructions, those directions that tell you how to make the cake. So these are all things to take a look at and to be honest and write them down so that when you're praying about it, you know exactly where you're going and you're knowing exactly how to look at it. A couple more things. The 6th thing is to ask the Lord to help you. Ask for help if you need it, right? And to help you to find appropriate ways to deal with it. So who can I ask to help me with this situation? Who can I ask that's going to help me get my book published? Who can I ask that's going to help me get to the venues and find the places I need to go in order to promote my book? How am I going to deal with the stress of an illness of a loved one? Is there anybody I can talk to that can maybe help me walk through some of these things? You can get this book, What Not to Say. I talk about some of those things in there. There's other things, right, to look at it and go, how do I manage? What do I do, right? Is there somebody else who's been where I am and knows how to walk through this? Let's do it together. If I need help, I'm not a computer whiz. My kids, I think I drive them crazy sometimes. I can do the basic things on it, but when I have to do something that's tricky or tough, I need help. And that's just the truth. I need help. So I ask for help though. Instead of getting frustrated and aggravated and all of those things, I will reach out and I was like, hey, I got something I need to do. Can you help me? Right? Because I'm not good at this. And then number 8, we talked about this a little bit before, is making a breakdown list to help you to move through the stress with help if needed, and then follow the plan. So that's like making step 1. It's like, okay, step 1, I need to somebody in my family is ill. And I think about even when my mom was sick, I lived in Edmonton, Alberta, and she lived in Saskatchewan, and that was a 10-hour drive every time I had to go, and I had to help her, and I was in Edmonton for a week and then with her for a week. And so there was things that needed to happen. It was a high stress level period of time for me, but sitting down and going, okay, so what can I do? I have sons, 2 sons. I need a babysitter. I can't take them with me all of the time. I need to be able to do these things, making a list and going, when I get to where my parents are, I need to talk to the doctor. I need to talk to home care. I need to get some groceries. I need to make some meals. I need to visit the hospital. I need to bring this. I need to do these things. So making that list so that you can tick that off as you go helps to reduce the stress because you've got a plan. When you've got a plan, it's easier to walk through instead of getting stuck. And if you need help, then you ask for help. You simply ask somebody and go, hey, looking for a little help at this time. Can you give me assistance? So those are some of the things to look at. And then number 7, when you're done and you've looked at all of this and you've prayed it through and you've looked at it and you've forgiven the people you need to forgive, then you have to just simply take the stress and the stressful situation you're in and just go, here you go, Jesus. I don't know what to do with this anymore. I've done all that I can do. So I'm giving it to you to just relieve me of the stress that I'm feeling and the pressure I'm feeling in the moment. And so then you just leave it with him and try not to pick it up again. And that's harder than it sounds. But I hope that as we started to talk about stress, that this is something that I know that many of us do relate to it, but I think most of us get lost in the fact that if we've grown up in a very stressful home life, in a very stressful environment, we don't even recognize we have stress until we're way up here. When we have stress down here, we don't even recognize it as stress. We just think it's life, the kids are doing bad in school. Oh, well, whatever, right? Like, the car broke down. Oh, well, there we go. Just another thing. But it's still stress. Yes, you know what to do. Yes, you know to take it to the garage. But there's still stress because you've got to work these things out as you move forward. And so I hope you found this helpful. Like I said, share, subscribe, please. It does help me. It does help this content to get out to other people who need it. So subscribe, share, comment, like, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for everything. I appreciate every one of you.